Changing its tune, the government is downplaying plans to allow migrant workers from India into Taiwan. Will they or won't they? The top opposition parties say they'll team up based on poll results.
A step forward in the rights for Indigenous people here in Taiwan, as for the first time, an Indigenous man has just his Indigenous name on official documents.
Fattening up fish by modifying their DNA. A Taiwan fish farm is looking to beef up Taiwan's aquaculture industry. Good evening and welcome. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao reporting from Taipei. Taiwan's labor minister is denying rumors that the country could open its doors to a large number of migrant workers from India.
这是假讯息，那我们怀疑这是有人刻意在操作，所以在这里我要呼吁我们的国人同胞不要掉入认知作战的陷阱。
Xu's statement comes after a Bloomberg report claiming that Taiwan could allow up to 100,000 migrant workers sparked racist comments on Taiwanese social media. Taiwan's labor ministry earlier announced a plan to sign a labor agreement with India to combat labor shortages. To understand more about the backlash over Indian migrant workers, John Van Triest spoke to Professor Tang Wei-min of Furen Catholic University.
First of all, before we even get started, I want to ask you, why would Taiwan be an attractive place for Indian migrant workers in the first place, especially when there's a whole big diaspora of Indians around the world and they could probably get paid a lot more in other countries, Singapore, for example. Why would they want to come to Taiwan at all?
Taiwan is another choice. I mean, next to Singapore, you just mentioned, or Japan, or Australia, or even so other places. So I do think, a lot of them will come to Taiwan to enjoy these kind of higher democracy, very highest level of democracy, also enjoy learning what about a very interesting relationship between Taiwan and India. I think that would be very attractive to some Indian friends. Yeah, India has 1.4 billion people, so only a handful of Indians will be interested. That would be enough for Taiwan.
Are they really going to find themselves enjoying Taiwan? At first, they're working in difficult jobs, but secondly, given all of the, some of it openly hostile and even racist backlash we've seen online.
Yeah, I look at it in a more positive way. It's a good opportunity to increase or empower Taiwan people to know more about Indian. I put it in a way like Indian literacy. Okay, it's a good opportunity for Taiwan to read more about Indian through Indian lens, not through other disinformation, from other social media, or has been kind of a media demonization, right? So I am frustrated and also positive. Finally, that would be the greatest moment that Taiwanese people will look into Indians in a different, consider different spectrum of issues.
Even though you don't see this sort of hostility as being reflective of the majority here in Taiwan, do you think that as word of it gets back to India, it's going to hurt Indian-Taiwan relations? It's a big deal because Taiwan has really looked to India as an important partner in its move away from China.
I heard a parade is now being prepared against. I think that's partially because, we are doing political campaign for our president, right? It hurts the feelings when somebody organizes a parade or a lot of so much information that kind of discrimination or it hurts feelings, of course. But in terms of government-to-government relations, I think that's fine too.
That was Professor Tang Wei-min speaking to our reporter John Van Triest. Taiwan's two biggest opposition parties are comparing poll results to decide which of their candidates will run for president in January. In a historic agreement reached earlier this week, the Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party said they'd run a joint ticket. Today, 3 nominated experts will convene to decide who comes out on top, the KMT's Hou You-yi or TPP's Ke Wen-je. But the process for deciding whose candidate gets top billing is far from transparent. To find out more about the process, Ed Moon spoke to political analyst Ross Feingold.
Can you explain to us what this polling policy between the Kuomintang or Chinese Nationalist Party and the Taiwan People's Party actually involved? So what's the process for them to select their candidate?
Basically, the Kuomintang or Nationalist Party candidate will get to propose a polling expert. The Taiwan People's Party candidate will get to propose a polling expert. And Ma Ying-jeou, as the supposedly neutral arbitrator here or mediator, he'll get to propose a polling expert. And the polling experts are going to review various polls from the previous 10 days about whether the public prefers Ko Wen-je of the Taiwan People's Party or Hou Yu-ih of the Chinese Nationalist Party. And who's ever ahead in a poll gets a point. And if it's within the margin of error, they'll each get a point. And then I guess the intention is that whoever has more points based on the polls that they have looked at will be declared the presidential candidate, and the other gentleman will have to be the vice presidential candidate.
Taiwan's former president Ma Ying-jeou was heavily involved in brokering this deal. He was also a KMT president, a lifetime member of the KMT. What exactly does he have to gain from getting involved, and why was he seen as a neutral arbiter in this?
Probably he was chosen as the neutral mediator because there is a lack of other people. Taiwan society just lacks that kind of individual. There are very few people one could point to and say this person is the ideal neutral party to arbitrate between two political parties. And the moment someone does so, then they become a political figure themselves. So finding somebody who was not tainted by politics to then mediate this process, then they would be identified as somebody who wants to help the Nationalist Party and the Taiwan People's Party to beat the Democratic Progressive Party. So it is inherently a political mediation process. And that actually relates to your second question. Why would Ma Ying-jeou want to do this? What's the incentive? And that's pretty simple. He wants the DPP to lose.
The results are due to be announced on Saturday. What do you think the chances are that there'll be some kind of a dispute? And do you think both parties are likely to stick to the agreement?
So the two sides are hoping that they won't have disputes. I think we could only assume that. And you're correct in asking this question because it does leave some wiggle room for one of the gentlemen to say, no, that's not what I intended. So the whole agreement is not applicable anymore, and I'm walking away. So there still is that possibility, but I guess we'll only know the level of respect for the polling experts and for Ma Ying-jeou's mediating role on Saturday when they have their meeting to go over the data.
Who do you think is likely to come out on top at the end of the day in this polling?
It's hard to say because there have been so many polls, and Hou Yu-ih of the Nationalist Party, Kuomintang, and Ko Wen-je of the Taiwan People's Party. Some polls have them neck and neck. Some polls have Ke ahead. There's been polls that show Hou ahead. But just looking at the totality of polls over the past, say, 6 months, typically Ko Wen-je does poll higher than Hou Yu-ih.
That was our reporter Ed Moon speaking to political analyst Ross Feingold. The Taiwan court has quashed any chance of prisoners voting in January's national elections. The Supreme Administrative Court overturned an earlier ruling that allowed a polling station in Taipei prison. It came after a prisoner asked to be allowed to exercise his right to vote, but the Supreme Court said citizens can't demand polling booths in prisons. That ruling is final. Absentee voting is not allowed in Taiwan, and people have to travel to their registered place of residence to cast their ballots. Former political activist Huang Guochang has quit the New Power Party, which he helped found. He's now cast his lot in with another younger party, the Taiwan People's Party. As John Van Trieste reports, it's a political about-face that could shake up the legislature.
A political bombshell less than 2 months from a crucial election. This prominent figure in Taiwan's progressive circles has made a dramatic break with much of what he stood for. Huang Guochang rose to national prominence in 2014 alongside the student activists protesting a trade pact with China. China claims Taiwan and has even said it will use military force to take it. Worried about Taiwan's sovereignty, students took over the legislature. Their 3-week sit-in saw the deal called off. Buoyed by this success, Huang helped found the New Power Party, a new youthful force in politics. For a time, it looked set to take on Taiwan's two-party system, pushing the country towards the left and towards independence. Huang served as one of the party's early lawmakers. A decade on, though, that adrenaline has long since worn off. The party has lost key members and today has just 3 legislative seats. Frustrated by the two main parties' continued hold on the country, Huang's jumping back into the political fray. But this time, he's going for the latest hot name in third-party politics.
我希望柯文哲当选总统，履行竞选承诺，筹组一个用人为才、跨越党派的联合政府。
Polls show Ko Wen-je's Taiwan People's Party has a shot at winning, especially if they rally the rest of the opposition. But this is a very different third party. It's centrist, populist, and far less suspicious of China. In a leaked policy paper, the parties even floated the idea of reviving the very trade deal Huang and his student friends fought to defeat. In a joint interview, Ke said he's proud to have Huang on board.
邀请他来当这个我们不分区立委，我们要争取黄国昌，
争取黄国昌
参加我们民众党，委以重用。
Reeling from the news, the New Power Party held a defiant press conference.
的确跟黄国昌前主席的理念完全不同了，所以也只能祝福他。那同时也谢谢他的离开。我想他的离开让时代力量变成一个更愿意倾听、更有同理心，也更能够坚定地走在本土进步价值路线的政党。
The defection of a single politician may not change the course of the election, but it's a major blow to a party that's still trying to change Taiwan's political landscape. And it shows that even with the election so close, there's always room for another surprise. Andy Xue and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
An indigenous Dayan man became the first Taiwanese person to use just his Romanized Indigenous name on his national ID card following a landmark court ruling. Rick Glauert has more.
A new national ID card for Valdo Bayen of Taiwan's Dayan indigenous group. He's the first person in the country to be allowed to use just his indigenous name, written in the Roman alphabet, on this document.
真的是太感动，太开心了，实在太开心了。这才是原住民真正的名字，这才是真正原住民的名字。我可以看天上跟我的祖先讲。
It's a major step forward for Taiwan's 600,000 indigenous people, who for decades were forced to use Mandarin and restricted from expressing their cultures, leaving them feeling like second-class citizens. But laws have changed since Taiwan became a fully fledged democracy. Indigenous people's rights to speak their languages and express their culture are now protected. These rights don't always translate into everyday life, and Indigenous people are still facing an uphill battle for equality. Valdo had to sue the government to use his indigenous name, without also including a Chinese translation. The court agreed that this policy infringed on his rights and dignity as an indigenous person.
其实在我们的原运前辈争取之下，其实我们已经有这个恢复传统姓名的相关的程序。可是呢，在这个程序里面又很诡异，他们规定说我们要用中文字来翻译我们的名字。那我叫萨蒙啊，这个名发音里面有很多是中文里面没有的那个音的发音的方式，所以我翻成中文的时候，其实大家就会念不对。
Indigenous people trace their ancestry in Taiwan back thousands of years, long before the now majority Han Chinese migrated to the country. The Dayan language, like all of Taiwan's indigenous languages, has no relation to the Mandarin Chinese spoken across the island and is written using Roman letters.
为了避免让我们的后代子孙会有一个好像文化被取代的概念，所以我必须要去做一个动作，要让政府把我们真正的语言用我们过去所习惯的罗马拼音的方式，把我们的身份注记在身份证上面。
Valdo's court win only applies to him. It won't set a legal precedent. Other indigenous activists are already filing similar petitions in the hopes of being recognised in the same way, putting pressure on the government to change its laws. Chris Ma and Rick Glauert for TaiwanPlus.
In sports news, Taiwan beat Australia 6-0 in its second game at the Asia Professional Baseball Championships in Japan. The game went into extra innings as the teams held each other scoreless after 9. Taiwan scored 2 runs at the beginning of the 10th inning, then second baseman Ling Jingkai went deep to hit a grand slam, giving Taiwan its 6-run lead. Taiwan lost its first game in the competition against Japan earlier in the week. The Asia Professional Baseball Championships is a regional tournament between leagues in Taiwan, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. Japanese Prime Minister Kishida Fumio and Chinese President Xi Jinping have held their first face-to-face talks in over a year. Speaking on the sidelines of the APEC summit in San Francisco, Xi told Kishida that the two countries should reaffirm their, quote, strategic relationship of mutual benefit. Both leaders said they're open to discussing their common interests and to properly handling their differences. Kishida is expected to meet with his U.S. and South Korean counterparts before the summit ends. While most of the focus at APEC so far has been on the two strongest member economies, the U.S. and China, the other 19 have an important role to play. Our reporter on the ground, Joyce Zeng, explains.
A customary group photo to kick off the leaders' meeting for the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, this year hosted by the U.S. in San Francisco. All eyes have been on the U.S.'s volatile relationship with China, with the two countries' presidents having a rare in-person meeting on the summit sidelines. But now a shift in focus to the main reason they're in town, to fortify ties with the other 19 APEC partners, many of whom are so-called middle powers or economies, like Indonesia, Vietnam, and others in ASEAN.
ASEAN, Southeast Asia and ASEAN has a traditional role of convening these great powers, top leaders of the world to talk. Having these middle economies there reminds us that there's still a global system, a world economy beyond just the US and China.
Though they may not boast the same economic strength as the US or China, analysts say middle economies like Mexico and Indonesia do have the ear of superpowers and can wield sufficient influence to shape international discourse.
Middle powers are not without any power. They can set the agenda, they can introduce issues, they can talk about AI, they can talk about quantum, they can talk about concerns about the South China Sea. I mean, all of these things are issues that middle powers can raise.
For the U.S., listening to and helping sustain these middle economies in the Asia-Pacific is important, since over half of its exports goes to APEC members. A trade-related issue raised by APEC member Thailand was that of shipping infrastructure. Speaking to CEOs in a parallel forum, Prime Minister Seta Thavisin pitched a new land bridge project to connect the Andaman Sea to the Gulf of Thailand and cut down on transport congestion. With APEC commanding over half of the world's GDP, member economies working together can amount to significant change. The APEC summit is more than just formal talks, as the leaders also get a chance to socialize over dinner and even trips to the museum. So even though no breakthrough policies may come out this week, the non-binding conference is still an important opportunity for middle economies to be at the same table as the bigger powers. Justin Wu and Joyce Dun in San Francisco for TaiwanPlus.
In northern India, rescue workers are drilling through debris to reach 40 workers who have been trapped in a collapsed tunnel since Sunday. Tiffany Wong has the story.
Rescue crews in northern India have drilled a third of the way through debris in a collapsed tunnel to reach 40 construction workers who have been trapped for nearly a week. They still have 40 meters to go before reaching the workers. An advanced drill was flown in from New Delhi to speed up their efforts, which have been hampered by falling debris.
So the effort is on to remove that debris, and there's a challenge because, again, from the ceiling, the lot of debris is coming down again, and the effort is being made to put through a steel pipe to reach the workers and retrieve them from that steel pipe.
Emergency crews have sent food, water, oxygen, and medicine through a small pipe to the trapped workers, some of whom have reported fever, headaches, and nausea. Outside the tunnel entrance, protesters gathered, angered by the delays, finding little consolation in official reassurances that those trapped would soon be freed.
सबकी कमी है, प्रशासन कमी है, कंपनी कमी है, प्रशासन और वीआईपी लोग आ रहे हैं, काहे के लिए आ रहे हैं यहाँ?
The tunnel is part of a government highway project meant to improve connectivity in a popular place for religious pilgrimage. But the project has been riddled with safety and environmental concerns. It runs through a landslide-prone area near the Himalayas, where heavy rains have caused severe infrastructure damage. Officials plan to investigate what went wrong, but for now, their efforts remain on rescuing the trapped workers. James Lin and Tiffany Wong for TaiwanPlus.
National Taiwan University will recruit up to 60 foreign students for its Semiconductor undergraduate program set to begin in September next year. It's Taiwan's first chip program offered in English, allowing students from across the globe to learn from experts about the critical and advancing industry. Our reporter Rosie Greninger sat down with the director of the program, Professor Li Junhao, to find out more.
Why is it important for Taiwan's universities to recruit international students to learn about the semiconductor industry?
I think Taiwan is very good. We are very good at some specific part of semiconductor, that is semiconductor manufacture. Yeah, so for example, 60% of the semiconductor IC chips was produced in Taiwan, and for the advanced IC chip, actually that's about 90%. So we are very good in this part, but Taiwan is very small. So we think that is the very important thing is to increase the pool, the talent pool, and we need more foreign students to join that. So after that, maybe they will stay here because we have very good ecosystem, or they can go to other countries, but they know what Taiwan can do, so they can leverage the advantage of Taiwan. And also because Taiwan right now is the leading country in semiconductor manufacture. So we are talking about the industry, but they can go to the academic pathway. So they can keep on learning semiconductor in Taiwan as well. I think that they will definitely include the visibility of Taiwan because of the semiconductor.
What advantages will this course provide for international students compared to courses in countries like South Korea and the US who also have strong chip industries?
Yeah. You are absolutely right. So there are lots of the different countries, they have the semiconductor courses. But I think that the foundation is the manufacturer. So it provides like a playground for the IC design house, so they can do the IC design. And Taiwan is very small, but the good thing is the concentration is high, density is high. So that's easy to travel in Taiwan. So we can solve the problem very fast. So the students join this program actually in the third year or fourth year, they will have the intern, and they can go to different companies. So they will learn a lot about this kind of flexibility, and they can, I think that they will enjoy the course here.
Has there been a lot of demand for this program? Is that one of the reasons it was created?
Actually, why we want to initiate this program, because we receive lots of the requirement. And one example is actually, maybe you know, TSMC, they will have the factory in Germany. And so from next year, February to June, actually, there will be about 40 Germany students, and that was selected by the university there and come to NTU. So actually, we feel the strong demand, and the international students, they want to come to Taiwan to learn semiconductor. However, unfortunately, right now, we don't have this kind of degree program. So we think this program, that is a 4-year, and we can give a very complete training for these students. So we think that is a good time to do this thing.
That was Professor Li Junhao discussing National Taiwan University's new semiconductor undergraduate program for foreign students. Scientists in Taiwan are editing the DNA of fish to make them meatier. As Laurel Stewart explains, it could be a cost-effective way to support the fish industry.
Plump and healthy, these fish, if found in the market, add a little extra to the plate. They've had their genes edited to grow bigger and fatter, which means they're meatier too. Gene editing is different from genetic modification. Modification involves introducing genes from other organisms, while gene editing involves changing the DNA directly. Scientists at National Taiwan Ocean University have been researching the technique on sea bream for 4 years, and they've found the genetically engineered fish can grow to be over 22% bigger.
应用在所谓的精准育种，是利用它不引进外源的这个 DNA， 但是针对跟性状相关的基因，可以做它的精准的基因的突变，然后可以达到像传统的这个用随滴突变，然后再透过多世代的这个选育所得到的一样的这个形状。
These are the parent fish. They've had their genetic codes modified and their sperm and eggs extracted to be artificially fertilized. The fertilized eggs are then injected to encourage specific genes to mutate, which leads to plumper offspring.
它的整个的体型基本上就改变了，对它的左右两边的这个肌肉，就是我们所谓的鱼片的部分，跟它的这个背肌跟腹肌，都大幅的增加。所以你可以从外形上就会看到说，它的体宽、体高，还有体重，基本上都大幅的这个增加。
Even these 4-month-old genetically engineered sea bream are already big and healthy. They'll later be farmed to create a new generation of plump fish. Taiwan is a fish-loving nation. The average person here eats almost 55% more fish than people worldwide. But climate change and overfishing have led to shortages and rising prices. The lab hopes the technique can be applied across the fish farming industry to provide a sustainable way to keep food on the table. Alex Chen and Laurel Stewart for TaiwanPlus.
Now that just about does it for this edition of TaiwanPlus News. If you like what you saw, well, consider downloading the TaiwanPlus app or visiting our website and social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally today, images of the Fairies Day celebration in Tibet. I'm Leslie Liao. Take care, enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you next time.